Chapter number 4 of a continuing video series by the National Straight Pride Coalition, of which I'm the founder and director, of how straight pride coalitions can save America. And we're discussing the philosophy of why we need them, what they're meant to oppose, what we expect to accomplish, and all of these basic foundational reasons. So in a continuance, we discussed evolution in the previous 3 chapters and how it is a lie. We discussed what's called cognitive dissonance, where those of you who believe in evolution can have an immediate turn off of your mind to any objections which you hear to the challenges to evolution, that it is a fraud, and that will not be accepted by your mind if it's been trained that way. So I'm reaching out to you. This is a series where you have to be able to look inside yourself and see where you're automatically turning off the things that I'll be saying, and open your mind up to a perspective of the possible truth of them in order to have any ability to see what we're presenting both now and originally as we lead down this path down to how we can describe the victory of straight pride parades to save our nation. So I want to go back into these different 2 religions, and this will be a 10-minute segment as the others. We're going to start to close up shop at minute 9. But I want to mention these 2 religions which we discussed before. We're talking about Christianity versus its opposite, Satanism, humanism. They are irreconcilable. They can never be reconciled. 2 completely different philosophical worlds, both in the idea of evolution, which is a satanic humanist idea, and its Christian opposite, which says that God created us. So I want to lead into the straight pride parades. Our first one in Modesto, which is upcoming, will cover many different topics. If you go to our nationalstraightpridecoalition.org website, you'll be able to see those topics. And just starting out on one out of the numerous ones we're discussing, we're defending masculinity. And so the question can be said, well, why do you bring that up as a topic? But it's extremely important because when we're talking about these 2 religions, we're talking about a war, an act of war. As I speak, it's always been going on from time immemorial. But we're talking about a war between these 2 religious factions. The so-called LGBTQ community represents the satanic humanism religion. And so they are in a war against their Christian opposites. And our motto, again, is normal, natural, healthy, sane for our Christian organization. We represent that function of humanity. And so in masculinity, we're bringing it up because masculinity is under attack in this broad war battlefield between the 2 religious opposing religions. Masculinity, for the victory of Satanism, humanism to occur, they have to destroy men. What does it mean to be a man? And so in the presentation, the ideas I'm going to present to you is that be you a man or a woman, just because you show up with body parts of that gender doesn't mean that you are a man or a woman. And I'm going to present that as an idea that there's 2 different groups we're going to talk about: men and women, and males and females. Mm-hmm. Men and women, in this sense, are the natural God-created people. And they are normal, natural, healthy, sane, as God created us. Now, Christianity says that we are born in sin. We are separated from God due to sin, and that Christ was brought to us by God as a method to reconcile us to God and cross that broken sin bridge to God, which is broken by sin. It will heal that bridge, and we can be reconciled to our Creator through His redemption, Christ's redemption. But what I'm leading to is there are an inferior man and an inferior woman. I'm going to label them as males and females. The males and females are fallen, or they're mutated men and women in an inferior sense. So what I'm leading to is that if you can take a man, say a little boy, and break him at the youngest ages through whatever interactions, and typically this will be an interaction, men and women are broken to males and females by a very common process known as sin. And let's go back to the idea we're created beings by God, and in this concept of Christianity, God has an enemy. I'll call him the enemy of God, what we know as Satan, Lucifer. When a newborn child can be tricked without realizing it, and this can happen at the earliest ages before they can even speak, they will be interacting with their parents. Their parents will be arguing or bickering or whatever, fill in the blank, a discord between the parents, And so the child reacts to that without even understanding that, without being able to put it into words. They will react to the negative energies, we'll call it, between the parents, and they can resent the parents or hate them without even realizing it. And this is a trick from the enemy of God to plant, because when they resent their parents, it breaks them from the connection to the Creator. And there's no such thing as a spiritual vacuum. The enemy of God will rush in and fill that vacuum and whisper in their soul ear, and they will be trained without realizing to resent their parents. And that is what breaks them. And that is what changes them from a potential man to a male. And what are the ramifications of that? Many, many different ramifications. And it's a fantastic spectrum. It can come from, let's say this right now. There is no such thing as a LGBT or homosexual man. It doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. Homosexuals, to be afflicted by the soul pathology of homosexuality is to be broken in your spirit, to where the polarity, natural God-given polarity of your spirit toward male and female is broken, and now you are attracted to the opposite, like positive and positive magnets being attracted to each other. In normality, that would not occur. But in a reverse morality of where the person has been warped and broken in their spirit, broken in their soul by the resentment within them, without even realizing it, then they have a attraction which is filled by homosexuality or drug abuse, addiction, anything to fill that soul hole with him. This is a soul hole which we're talking about where they're broken. So anything which fills that, and I will speak of a very recent occurrence. There was a young lady in the Kennedy family, a very beautiful young lady who just passed within the last week, but she passed due to depression. And she was depressed, as the family said, for many, many years. And roughly through news accounts, it occurred at the breakage of her parents. Her parents were divorced. So I don't know the full interactions, but I would present to you that it's unfortunately as common as sand that when when parents divorce, the children can have an emotional reaction which breaks them in some way, and they can have a resentment or anger toward the parents, either both, or for real or imagined. Even things which didn't occur, they can still resent their parents. So, but essentially, we're talking about a broken soul. And so when that broken soul manifested in this young lady, she was unable to overcome that. And she chose, either willingly or unwillingly, without realizing it, to try to drown it out with narcotics or pharmaceuticals, and it killed her. And this is unfortunately a fantastic tragedy for that young lady. It's a terrible tragedy, but it is so common, but it's a spiritual component. Mm-hmm. Because we're not just biological beings who evolved from an amoeba. We have a spirit, a soul. And so when that soul is broken, there are ramifications, be it depression or addiction to alcohol, or let's say that we have a gentleman who he has a midlife crisis we hear about. So he dumps his wife for a younger model. That can be another manifestation of this broken soul who seeks to fill his soul, get soul fulfillment by dumping his wife for another newer model, as compared to a spiritual fulfillment, because a broken soul can only be healed by the Creator in the spiritual element. So going back to the LGBTQ community, what we're experiencing is common as sand, broken souls who were smashed in some way to have this attraction to the opposite sex because they're broken in spirit. And we're closing in on the end of our 10-minute session, but I wanted to break into this, that this is as common as sand. You, the listener, it's happened to you. It happens to every human being. In some way or another, you're going to be attacked by the enemy of God, who attacks you in your soul to break you and make you a slave of it. And so you're either a servant to God, or as the phrase goes, you're either a servant in heaven or a king in hell. So that's your choice in life, but it affects directly the Straight Pride Parade and what we're trying to do in this battle between the two religions. So it's a war within humanity, within each human in humanity, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, it's occurring. So God bless you. We'll continue in a later chapter. NationalStraightPrideCoalition.org. Please join us in our site, and please follow us. And God bless you in all that you do. Thank you.
Perfect.